If you just got your Spectra pump and you're wondering how to use it, you're in the right place. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to use the Spectra S1 or the Spectra S2 in no time. Before we jump in though, I want to make sure you know about my free pumping guide that you can download today. It's in the description for this video and it has tons of resources for pumping, including schedules, when to change your pump parts, and much, much more. So make sure to go and grab that from the description below, and now let's dive in. This is the Spectra S1. You've probably seen Spectra S1 and Spectra S2. I have both of them, but I have loaned my other S2 out, so today we're just going to be showing you the S1. They are very similar in the way that you use them. The only difference is that the S1, which is the blue one, is rechargeable, and the S2 has to be plugged into the wall. That is really the only difference between them. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of how to use the Spectra, I want to tell you a little bit more about some of the parts that will come with it. It can be a little bit tricky at first when you're putting them together, so having a solid understanding of what they are and how to use them is going to make your use of the Spectra a lot easier. I know that I have personally had my Spectra not work well, or others haven't, just because the pump parts weren't working as they should. When you get your breast pump, if you are buying it new, you are going to get a variety of items. You are going to get these full body flanges, so that is where the flange is attached to the bottle cap. You will also get tubing, which is what connects your flange to your breast pump. Spectra pumps have a backflow protector, and this has 3 different parts. It can be a little bit tricky to put together, but just remember the part with the thicker piece, you're going to put your plastic piece in. This is like the membrane, and you're going to push that in and make sure that it fits snugly. Then you put this part on top. This is honestly where I see people have the most issues because this is not put together correctly. There's also the duct valves, which is what you will put in the bottom of the part that you connect to your bottle. This is really important. Again, if you're not using them, your pump's not going to work effectively. And then of course you have bottles to pump into. Now the parts that I have are actually off-brand. They are from Maymom, but they work pretty similarly. I believe that all Spectra pumps come with these full body flanges, but I actually really don't love these. To be honest, most of you are not going to be a 24 or 28, which is what usually comes with the Spectra. So instead, you're going to want to just order this right off the bat. This is the Spectra adapter. This is from Maymom. There's other companies. And then you can interchange all of the flanges. For whatever reason, I find that the detachable flanges work much better than the full body ones. So even if you happen to end up being a 24 or 28, you are going to want to get the detachable ones. Once you put together the membrane, you are going to put this thick piece into your bottle cap. So if you were using this one, you would just put it in here like that. But I'm going to do it here. Then you would put on your flange just like that. And then you would connect your tubing right here. And make sure that's on there nice and snugly. Make sure that your duckbill valve is on there securely as well. And then in front of your Spectra, it has these 2 holes. Usually it has a little cover on it so you can single pump. Mine fell off, so I don't have that. But this is where you're going to connect the tubing. And again, make sure that's in there nice and snugly. And if you don't have the cap on there, you do need to put both of these on, or else the pump is not going to work effectively. Make sure that you are regularly changing things like the duckbill valve and some of the membranes. If you are a regular pumper, you're going to want to change these every month or so. Sometimes you could go a little bit longer, sometimes it might be less frequent. With the duckbill valve, if you start to notice that it's opening in the bottom, that's a surefire sign that you need to replace it. And of course, when you get your brand new pump and you take all the parts out, make sure you clean and sanitize them before the first use. Now that you have your pump set up and ready to go, put your bottles on and you can put them onto your breast. One thing you want to look for to make sure that you have the right fit when you're pumping is that your nipple is the only part of your breast that is going into the tunnel part of your flange. This is a little different than what we've thought in the past, where we thought, oh yeah, an areola going in there's fine, or having more of the breast going is fine. Sometimes you can do this and you won't have any pain, but more recent research is showing that having just the nipple in there ends up leading to more comfort and more milk output. So look for that, and then when you have it on your breast, you want to make sure that it doesn't feel off center or that only part of the nipple is being pulled in. Getting the right size flange is very important. And as I mentioned earlier, The standard Spectra kit only comes with a 24 and a 28. In my clinical experience over the last year, I've not fit someone over a 19. So getting the off-brand parts is going to be important and getting the right size. Before you get started, you want to make sure that you fully charge your Spectra. If you have the S1, you can charge it all the way, and then you should be able to get a few hours of use out of it without plugging it in. With the Spectra S2, you're always going to have it plugged into the wall, so just keep that in mind. Now that you have everything set up and ready to go, let's talk about the settings, which is why I'm sure most of you are here. The Spectra isn't overly complicated, but it does work a little bit differently than some of the other pumps that I've worked with. Some people find it could be a little bit confusing, especially when you first get started because you have to press a couple of buttons. First, let's talk about the two different modes. There's letdown mode, which is what you're going to use at the beginning of your pumping session and maybe a couple other times throughout your pumping session. Expression mode is when your milk starts to spray out more consistently, and letdown mode is the first mode that you're generally going to use. This is when your milk isn't quite spraying yet. It might be dropping, it might not be coming out at all. It's generally much faster, just like if your baby was at the breast trying to get milk to come out at the beginning of a breastfeeding session. Then there's expression mode, which is where most of your pumping session is going to take place. These are the longer pulls that you're going to get. When you turn on your pump, it's going to automatically start out in expression mode. When you first turn on your pump, you have everything set up and ready to go. You are actually going to press this button in the middle. It has 3 waves. Some people call it the bacon button. That is going to switch it to the letdown mode. Why it doesn't start out with that automatically, I don't really know, but it's important to remember that because it does help to stimulate that letdown. And if you're not sure what a letdown is, you are not alone. A letdown is essentially when your milk releases from the breast. So you might have a little bit of dripping at the beginning, and then when you see those strong sprays, that's when you have a letdown. Some people feel it, some people just see it. It really varies from mom to mom. You will also see on your Spectra that there is a cycle. Cycle is the frequency of sucks in 1 minute. So the higher it is, the faster it's going to go. With vacuum, that is the strength of the pull. So the higher the number, the more intense that pull is going to be. Despite what some people believe, a higher speed is not always better. In general, when you have the right size flange, you should be around 60 to 80% of your pump's total maximum speed. So if you have to crank yours all the way up, then that is probably too high. With the Spectra S1, it has vacuum strength from 1 to 12. If you are all the way up at 12, that is probably too fast. That is probably way too fast, and it might cause some damage or discomfort, and you might be using too big or too small. With letdown mode, you can only have it at cycle 70. You can change the vacuum from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. So you can have 5 different levels of suction for the vacuum. With expression mode, there are quite a few different cycles. There's 38, 42, 46, 50, 54, and then for vacuum, you can go from 1 to 12. Usually I recommend starting out on cycle 54 and around 5 or 6 for the vacuum. See how your body's responding, and you can go up or down depending on how you feel. Again, like I said earlier, if you feel like you have to go all the way up, you probably need to get a different flange size. For most moms, they get between 2 and 3 letdowns during a 20-minute pumping cycle. I think that about 15 to 20 minutes is the ideal time for pumping. If you're having to pump way longer than that, I would work with a lactation consultant to make sure that you are pumping as efficiently as possible. So if you were to start out, you want to turn on the button, press the bacon or the wavy button, and stay on the letdown mode until your milk starts to spray. After it starts to spray, press the wavy button, and then you will start out in whatever cycle you want. It does remember your last settings, but usually I recommend starting around 54 and at 5 or 6. After this, you can move it up and down. If your milk stops spraying, press the wavy button again until you get another letdown. There are lots of different settings out there. A lot of people that have come up with ideal settings for power pumping or for getting more milk or pumping in place of nursing or increasing your supply. I'll link to some of these articles below that you can check out, but just knowing the basic terminology behind using a Spectra pump is a great place to start. Many people just use the standard settings that are on there. They might go up on the vacuum a few times or maybe go down. You know it's the right settings if it feels comfortable, if you aren't in pain during or after a pumping session, your nipples don't look overly white or pinched after you're done pumping, and you get a reasonable amount of milk. And you're probably going to ask, how much milk is that? Usually we look for about 1/4 to 2 ounces when you are pumping in addition to nursing. So that would be within like an hour or so after nursing, maybe 15 minutes. If you're pumping in place of a feeding session, that will look closer to 1.5 ounces per hour from the last time you expressed or breastfed. If you are not getting within those ranges, definitely work with a lactation consultant to see if you have supply issues going on or if it's a pump issue. One of the biggest issues I see with pumping is that the stress of pumping makes it so they don't get their letdown. As hard as it can be, try and make your pumping sessions as relaxing as possible. You can put on music, you can listen to white noise, you can eat a piece of chocolate right beforehand. That's my favorite tip. Some people even like to cover their bottles so that they don't have to even see how much milk's coming out. Stress is one of the biggest inhibitors of oxytocin, which is what releases your milk. So keeping your pumping sessions really calm and peaceful are going to make a big difference. Some of that comes back down to understanding how your pump works and how it works with your body. I love the Spectra. I feel like it's a pretty good, solid pump that has been reliable for many years. I know some moms don't like the suck pattern, so if you are finding that the vibration bothers you, there are other pumps that you can try out. I'm personally a big fan of the Baby Buddha, especially the second edition that just came out, just because they have a mode that is not as intense. Their first edition is awesome, but it can be really intense for some moms. However, I love the Spectra. I recommend it all the time, and it's what I use in my office. When it comes to cleaning and maintenance, there's not a lot you have to do. Just use warm water, and to wipe this down, you can use pump wipes if you'd like. Obviously, don't submerge this into water. That's going to ruin your pump. For everything else, you can throw it on a sanitizing or cleaning cycle in your dishwasher. You can hand wash them. I personally have a great bottle washer that I use because I'm having to wash things frequently in my office. But just use mild soap. There's pumping soap and pumping wipes out there that you can also use. This is a beast of a pump, and it can be hard to just carry around and do hands-free pumping. I've seen some people put a belt around it and try and hook it around their body so it's easier to move around with. I find that hands-free pumping bras can be a total game changer, so that's something to also consider getting. I will link to some of my favorite ones below. Just a few other things that I think are helpful to know. There is an automatic timer that starts going as soon as you start pumping, which is handy to know how much time you're pumping. There is a nightlight feature for those middle of the night pumps. So it's super simple, just press that button. And it has 2 different settings. As I already said, I don't really think you should be pumping past 30 minutes, but if for some reason you are and it turns off, and you can go right back into what you were doing. And then finally, this is just a fun little tip that you can use if you want to see how much time you've spent pumping. This is also helpful if you are buying a used breast pump to ensure that you aren't getting something that has a ton of hours on it. So what you do is you press the power button, you press massage, cycle plus, vacuum minus, cycle minus, vacuum plus, and then the massage button. And in the middle, it will show you how many hours you've spent pumping. So there you have it, how to use your Spectra pump. That's just a basic tutorial. There's lots of different tips and tutorials out there on different settings that people like to use, but hopefully this gets you on the right track. If you want to learn more about pumping, including finding your perfect flange size, be sure to sign up for fuss-free pumping, which also comes with fuss-free flange fitting. You can get the link in the description below, and it's a great resource for anyone who is pumping, whether it's occasionally or exclusively. Otherwise, thank you for joining me today. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I can't wait to see you next time.